Welcome to this month's SOAR Disability Ministry Network. I'm Doc Hensley. I'm the Executive Director and Founder of SOAR Special Needs, and we're the host of this network. Let me just kick us off with a quick word of prayer, and then we'll go around and kind of introduce and meet everyone and start our discussions. But let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, God, we just thank you for this day you've given to us. God, I thank you for all the ministries that are here and represented today. I just pray that you bless each and every one. I pray that you help us all as we're trying to welcome individuals with disabilities and their families into our church. Pray that we'll have a good discussion today. Just pray for wisdom and discernment. Help all of us as we're trying to find volunteers and be able to serve our families the best we can. Just pray that we can rely on each other, and most importantly, pray that we can continue to seek you in all that we do and just share your love with these individuals. And remember, that's the whole reason for all this, is that they are fearfully and wonderfully made in your image and likeness, and that they can truly learn about your love and become children of God and become and make you their personal savior. And Lord, just thank you for this time together. I thank you for all these amazing leaders. Just pray that you bless each and every one of them and just bless our time now. We pray this in your great and holy name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. Well, to start off, we've got several new faces, which I absolutely love. Let's kind of go around. We'll have you introduce yourself. Tell me your name, where you're from, and the church you're with, and maybe the role, whether it's a formal role or a volunteer role, whatever that might be. And then if you happen to have a question or something, we'll kind of just log them that we can come back to. But first, we'll kind of go through everyone, and then this will just kind of be a discussion time. But we want to try to help reach everyone's questions with that. So. And I've got two Jasmines on here, so I'm not sure. I know you're using the same one, so I'm not sure who's who. But I'll let one of you introduce yourself, and then we'll get everyone going here.
Hi.
Go ahead, Jasmine.
Well, her name is not Jasmine. Her name is Jenny Feliciano, but she'll introduce herself in a minute. I'm Jasmine Ramos. I am an assistant pastor at the Church of the Revelation in the Bronx, New York City. Since 2011, I was a children's director there, and then when I became the children's pastor, and then now the assistant pastor, and I still oversee the children's ministry. And we have so many questions because in the past we've had a special needs ministry in our church, but our workers got burned out. The lead worker was one of the parents, and so as the child grew, then she also kind of moved on, and then she moved out of the state. So we kind of lost that ministry. And so we have so many questions. We have an awesome team. They love all of the children. We want to integrate every child. We want to be able to meet the needs of everyone. And then we also have some special people that work in our ministry that have special needs. So we want to kind of foster that and learn more and grow.
That's awesome. Love it. And I think we've got a consult coming up with you all here soon.
Yes, on Tuesday. So I can't wait.
Awesome. So what we don't get here, we'll dive deep there.
Yes,
so,
definitely.
All right, and I'm sorry I missed your partner's name. We talked a little bit, but what is it?
My name is Jenny Feliciano.
Jenny, nice to meet you, Jenny. Yes. Tell us about you.
I work in the children's ministry as a volunteer. I've been there for about 18 years. I work under Pastor Jasmine, and it's challenging to have the special needs children when they come to the ministry, because sometimes we don't have enough help and they require a lot of attention. So my question is, like, what do you do when you don't have enough help and you want to minister to them and try to reach them, but like you're being pulled like in different directions?
Yeah, great question. We'll get to that one. All right. My next one, Caitlin, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Lees, and I'm from Fellowship Church, which we have 3 campuses. We have one in Greenwood, Missouri, we have one in Raymore, Missouri, and then we have one in Archie, Missouri. And my formal role is Special Needs Ministry Director here. So we are super new. I just got hired on in January. So we're trying to create this right now. We're in the very much the planning phases, but we're starting to implement some things slowly, and we're excited.
Awesome. Welcome. Cynthia Dixon, welcome. Tell us about you.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Dixon. I am the Next Gen Kids Director here at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship here in Dallas. And many may know my pastor, Dr. Evans. And so we've had special needs. We continue to have special need program, but I just wanted to be a part of a network. And so that we always want to gain additional knowledge and go forth with how God has us in ministry. And so I have several questions. I'm so glad I'm a part. I will be a part of this team because it's dear to my heart. I have an adult, my son, 33, with special needs, and so it's closer to my heart than just being ministry. And so thank you for letting me be a part of the team.
Oh, so happy to have you here. Welcome. Sean, welcome, my friend. Tell us about you.
All right. My name is Sean Brooks, and I pastor in the Atlanta region, Atlanta All Nations Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was recently appointed as well as a Disabilities Ministries Coordinator for my conference. And so
awesome.
I'm also learning to network more and to grow my expertise there. I have 2 children with special needs out of 4, and each is a blessing to our family. And so I just like to connect and get to know more individuals as well as I work in this area.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. And before I forget it, Sean, coming up March 11th, I'll actually be in your neighborhood. The Together Conference is going to be in Atlanta. And it's a 1-day conference on Saturday, all on disability that, I encourage you to check out. But the Together Conference, it's all on disability. I'll be doing, I think I'm doing 3 or 4 talks that day. So it's in your backyard, brother. Let's come. I'd love to meet you face to face. So, but if you could pull that off, that would be fantastic.
Awesome.
Faye, welcome. Tell us about you.
Hi, Faye Cooper is my name. I am from Cleveland, Tennessee, from the North Cleveland Church of God. We have a very small ministry for special needs. When I came on board as the preschool pastor. Oh, and by the way, you have special needs also. So I have no formal training, but I have a heart for these families. So many families that can't even come to church because they can't. So we have 4 regular students. We are in a program where we're expanding our children's spaces, where we're going to have more space for special needs. So we're believing it's going to grow. We are adjacent to Lee University. So there has to be a way that we can partner with them and have the people that we need here to meet those needs. So I'm just kind of on here to listen and gather all kinds of knowledge.
We will talk on that. You just hit one of my favorite things on how to partner and think outside the box.
Yeah.
So that's one of my specialties. We'll definitely hit that, Faye.
Great.
All right, Connie, welcome. Tell us about you. You're muted.
I'm going to run over to her office because she's a part of my team. She's been having some technical difficulties. So you'll see me running between 2 doors.
it's all good. It's all good. We get it. Well, while we get Connie trying to work on that, let's hop to Michaela and we'll get Connie to. Oh wait, Connie's there now. All right.
Okay.
We got a twofer with Cynthia. All right, Connie.
I am Connie Weston. Again, I am with Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, and I am the coordinator for our kids ministry nursery with an addition to special needs. We do have special needs here, and so, I just want some more input on how best we can enhance our program here. We have a variety of different age groups of children. And so I want to know, what's best, some information on how we can differentiate or, have most of them in, together, or how we can do that. So I am here on this meeting willing to learn more about, I do have some training in special need because I have an associate in child development, awesome, which includes some special needs, but I do also want, your input on what's available.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, so glad to have you. All right, Michaela, welcome. Tell us about you.
Hi, I'm Michaela Hayes.
I
am the Kids Special Needs Discipleship Lead at Doxa Church in Rockland, California. And I've been doing this since September. We're just in the process of starting and launching a program to support kiddos, and it's going well so far.
Beautiful. Well, so glad to have all of you with that. And again, today, this is an open discussion. So we're here to learn from each other. That does not mean that Doc has to answer all these questions, okay? So as you guys, you can also answer some of these and share what works, what doesn't work for you. We've got multiple size churches here. We've got churches who have done ministry for a while. We've got churches who are just starting. So it's wonderful. We got a whole gamut. And then I can kind of come and help bring things in. But let's kind of start with a couple of things here, and then we'll kind of go out from there. How about we start with the volunteers? I know that's always a big thing for everybody. And the two things that I was hearing about first was how do we get the volunteers and recruit them? And then the bigger point, which we frequently overlook, is how do we deal with burnout, or how can we prevent the burnout? And that's a huge one. So let's first talk about volunteer recruitment and getting volunteers. I'm going to take a guess, raise your hand if you could use more volunteers. It's 100%, it's always that way. There's a, one thing that I learned many years, I've been in ministry now 15 years. One thing I've learned in ministry, you will never have enough volunteers, period. And so, I'll tell you right now, don't tell yourself this lie. I just need 5 more volunteers and I'm going to be set. It's not going to happen. You may need those 5 more volunteers, but life happens. You may all of a sudden, God might give you an influx of extra kids or whatever it might be area you're working. All of a sudden you need more volunteers. We always need more volunteers. And so that's a big area that we need to do. I heard a couple of times, a couple of people said, I don't really have experience with special needs. I don't know much about it. I don't have any training. You don't have to have training with it. And that's one of the big things I always push. I always say, you've got to be able to answer one question. And my one question, can you be a friend? You can be a friend. You're able to work in a special needs or disability ministry. That's all it takes to be able to do that. I have yet, and I'm a parent of a child with special needs. When my son got a diagnosis, even though I am a physician, I'm also a pediatric ER doctor. I was not given a handbook on everything about my child's diagnosis. And, my son had autism. and you might have heard the saying, but it's extremely true. If you know one individual with autism, you know one individual with autism, because they are all different. No two individuals are the same. That's why they call it a syndrome, because everyone's different. And what works for one may not work for another. But how you get to know them, how you work with them, is just by spending time with them. So that's the key, and that's what I always recommend to families. So let's just kind of open up for discussion. What do some of you do for volunteer recruitment? What works for you in recruiting volunteers?
I would say that and for our church, we pretty much ask people. So as we get to know people, as people get saved and they start coming to our church, we have our connect groups, we have our connect classes. Then on the way that we do it is, once we get to know you and we ask you, like, where do you feel called? What is God doing in your life? And then we have like a list of things in our church. But for the children's ministry, we do require a little bit more. So they have to be a member. They have to be attending the church for 6 months or longer, just so that we kind of know who they are. We do background checks. Then we conduct one interview. The department leaders are the ones that conduct the interview, and they get to know them by asking questions. And then we put them in. We put them in, and we give them sort of like an internship in each level or each section of the ministry, so that they kind of can know where they'll fit better. So even though I may have a need in preschool, I'm not necessarily going to put you there because I have a need there. I'm going to put you there if you feel called there. So that's how we do it. So we do lack, volunteers in certain areas, and we may have more in others, but it really is about where you feel you're called to. So that's how we try to do that.
Yeah, I love that, Jasmine. And what Jasmine was just sharing about is a key thing that a lot of ministry leaders miss out on. And so once I get a volunteer, and this is something I wish I knew early in my years as a disability ministry leader, or just any leader. I was a children's pastor for about 4 or 5 years before that. But when I would recruit a volunteer, my first question I always had for them was, what would you like to do? And the answer I used to get that I loved was, wherever your biggest need was. I loved that answer, because I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord, you're helping me fill these holes. But then I learned, oh my gosh, I'm losing this volunteer after 2 or 3 months because of burnout, or it's just not the right fit for them. And so what you need to do once you recruit a volunteer, we have to match passions up with that volunteer role, match their heart to a volunteer role. And so I no longer ask them what they want to do. So I love what you're doing there, Jasmine. My first question now is, what are you passionate about? And I try then to match that passion with the area of ministry that would maybe line up with that. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had a lady I was recruiting. I needed an adult female buddy to work with one of my older female teens that needed a female buddy. And I had a lady I worked with and I'll share another way to recruit here in a little bit, but did my plan with her, and it worked. And she said, I'm in. God's made it clear I need to serve here. And I asked her what she's passionate about. And her immediate answer to me was, I just absolutely love encouraging people and just building them up. I'm like, oh, that's fabulous. And yeah, that is being a buddy, but that's not the best use of that gifting. And so I'm sitting there going, oh, stink. I don't want to squeeze her into that peg. And then God kind of flicked me on the head. When we think outside the box and don't get so narrow on our one part. And God said, you know what, Doc, you're having a hard time keeping some of your volunteers maybe because you're not encouraging them. You need a volunteer encouragement coordinator. So I asked her if she would love to take over my volunteer encouragement. In other words, start it, because I wasn't doing it well. And so what we did was once a month, I gave her a small little budget and she would do a little something for all my volunteers. It started off with like a little baggie. She would put literally a small Hershey bar in it, a marshmallow and a graham cracker, and then put a note on it and said, we need more volunteers like you. It cost me 7 cents a package to make. And guess what happened? My volunteers went gaga over that. They loved it. And here's the unexpected thing that happened out of that. One, I started getting volunteers from other ministries coming to our ministry to serve because they saw in our ministry, they were no longer being just a number. They were being looked at as a person and they were being encouraged. That doesn't happen in all the other ministries. We're being treated as a number and just, you have to do all this. So we saw that benefit. And then with her, she came back about 3 months later and said, you know, this isn't enough for me. God wants me to do more. I want to be a buddy as well. So I ended up getting that buddy as well. But when you match your passion with, you know, the volunteer role, that's where you get a volunteer for the long haul. I had her serve with me for 6 years before she got married and moved out of state. Then she went and started a special needs ministry where she moved. So that's how you really get a ministry in for the long haul, is matching those passions. So I love you bringing that up, Jasmine. How about anyone else? What are some other things you do to help recruit, or what does your church do to recruit?
I have found it helpful just to ask the volunteers that I currently have if they know of anyone that has a similar passion. And I've gotten a couple names that way, and I've been able to individually reach out to those people.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Have your volunteers help recruit for you. Especially some of the best volunteers you can ever get. It really depends on when everything lines up ministry-wise at your church. But if you can tap into your student ministry, and if you can get one of the students and get into their friend group, all of a sudden you can get like 4, 5, 6, 10 students all helping because they want to serve together as friends. And so that's the big thing there. All right, let me give you a few other ideas on volunteer recruitment. First is the super easy one. Watch the individuals with special needs and disabilities in your ministry that you already have. Individuals with special needs have this innate ability in their heart that they don't see the outside of a person. They don't see their color. They don't see their sex. They don't see what they're with. They don't see any of that, but they see straight to the heart of a person. And they know if that person likes them or not. And they immediately, if they don't think that you like them, they're going to ignore you. And they know if you fake it. But if they can see you've got a heart for them, they're going to go up and make interaction with you. They're going to try to hug on you. They're going to grab your hand, maybe start dancing with you. So watch your students because they're going to be picking out volunteers for you. And then watch their interaction with the individual as well. And so what I usually do, I then come alongside them and ask them later, hey, I saw the interaction you had, with Tommy earlier today. He was the little boy with Down syndrome who came up and held your hand today. And I was really impressed with how you interacted with him. And I just want a quick question for you. Can you be a friend? And usually it's, well, yeah. I go, fantastic. That's the only requirement we have really to be able to serve in our ministry. And I'm not counting the background checks and everything else because every ministry has that. But you don't have to have any experience. We would love to have you help in our ministry. You can help with, Tommy and other kids like Tommy. And I think you can really help transform the lives. When you pray about doing that, you're going to have a high likelihood of getting that individual in as a volunteer because your individual already handpicked them for you. And so allow them to do a lot of that work for you with it too. How many of you have been able to share something to the church as a whole to let your church know that you've got a disability ministry? Awesome. Michaela, can you kind of share what you guys did?
Yeah, since we just started supporting kids with special needs within our kids ministry, we recently had just an announcement. We do announcements from the pulpit on Sunday mornings, and we just had an announcement letting the church know that we have a need for this, and we're already supporting kids, but in order to continue supporting the kids we have, and in order to support more kids with needs, that we need more volunteers. And the person that did our announcements that day was perfect. She's one of our student leaders, and just definitely has a heart for kids and families. And it was definitely very clear that
Awesome.
like there's a passion and a heart behind it. And we made sure to highlight in that announcement that no experience was needed, and we would happily train anyone who just had a heart for the ministry.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Cynthia, I think you said you did that as well. Can you share what your church did or does?
Currently, we're doing the same thing, but we also, because this is just a normal part of our church ministry, everything that we participate on any event, there is inclusion on every event throughout the entire ministry. And so it's just a part of the ministry. And so we have, from our Facebook to our social media platforms to whatever, Easter program production, it's an inclusion for the overall. So it's like a norm. It's part of our ministry.
Love that. And so that's one of the things to realize with the disability ministry. It's unlike any other ministry in that it truly affects every single ministry in your church. You're not just serving the individual with special needs, you're serving the entire family. And it really does affect the entire church. You might be saying, Doc, what do you mean? Well, I'll just use one very simple example. Let's say your worship leader, worship pastor, ministry director, whoever it is that leads worship on Sunday morning or Saturday, whenever you got worship. Frequently what they do, they get up to lead worship, and what's usually the first thing they say? Would you please stand and join us in worshiping today? Mm-hmm. Well, what if someone's in a wheelchair, or you got an elderly person who just had a hip or knee replacement and they can't stand? They truly feel discriminated, and they almost feel like they can't worship because it's being said, you have to worship by standing to do that. Well, that's not accurate. So, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One's just the very simple, and I don't care for it, but you can simply say, if you're able, would you please join us in standing and worshiping? Again, that's okay, but let's make it more inclusive. So that's all part of the training. So how can we do that? Well, why not just do this? Would you please join us in worshiping from your heart today as we sing? I just left it wide open for you to do anything you want, because you can worship from your seat, you can worship standing up, and guess what? And this is a real case for me. I had a 26-year-old adult with Fragile X syndrome who absolutely loved our worship. And he would charge the stage, would come up to the stage, and he would beat with the drum on the stage and kind of grunt. He was nonverbal, but he would grunt. That was his worship. And he absolutely loved it. And he truly was worshiping, and you could see it on his face. People all around him would go, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But then our worship pastor would sit there and say, hey, Brett, I absolutely love how you are worshiping God today. I wish we all could worship the way you are today. That just leveled the playing field, and everyone's like, oh, that's worship. And so sometimes we need the other ministries to help be on our team to level that playing field. All right. Any other questions on volunteer recruitment or other ideas? The other thing I'd say, when you can get in, if you ever can get in front of the church, that's always great. Just having an announcement in the bulletin is not going to be very helpful. Just having a brief announcement from the pulpit, it's not always the best. What I always encourage you to do is, if you can share stories, maybe see if you can get a 1.5 to 2 minute video and get up. And here's how I love to do it. If I would get to be able to get in front of the church and then tee up a quick video. And I've done it, and this is powerful. First off, you have to be energetic and show you're passionate for this ministry so everyone else can. And I don't know about all your churches, but just about every church I've ever been in or worked at, you've got the 80-20 rule, 80% of the work done by 20% of the people. Is that fair for all your churches? Well, what that tells me is you've got 80% of your people who are nothing more than glorified knickknacks collecting dust every worship service. They come in, sit in the chair or in the pew and just collect dust, and then they leave. They don't do anything else. Well, we got to change it. And those are the people we have to go after. So we can get a video of one of our families and have them share how important it is to have an opportunity to attend church. They might even share how difficult it is to come. You know, mom might be able to share, yeah, you know what? I wake up and I get Johnny dressed for church. And then I go get ready. And I come back, oh my gosh, Johnny's naked and I have to get him dressed again. And then I go get my other two kids ready and I come back, Johnny's naked again. I have to get him dressed again. Then I go get breakfast ready for everybody. And I come back, Johnny's naked again. I have to dress him again. And people are going, what do you mean? A 9 or 10-year-old you have to dress? That's unbelievable. Well, that's everyday life for our families. Yes. Oh, and guess what? We also have to, take care of them with the bathroom and other things too. That's mind-blowing for families that have neurotypical kids. So just sharing that, what a blessing it is to have a church that will welcome them and serve them. And so I usually get up and I'll say, hey, so happy to have you all here today. I got a quick question. Raise your hand if you can be a friend. I have 100% of the auditorium raise their hand because everyone can be a friend. And I go, congratulations. Everyone here just made the only requirement we have to serve in our disability ministry. And we need help. Do you know that currently only 11% of churches in the United States welcome families with special needs? Our church is going to be different. 89% turn away, but our church is going to be one of the 11%, and we need your help in welcoming our families. It's difficult for them. 90% of families with disabilities don't attend church. It's the largest unmet people group in our backyard, and we're going to reach them, but we need your help. Take a minute and hear a story on how important it is for a family to be able to come to church. And then you share that story, and then you say, all you need is to be a friend. You don't have to have any experience. Come talk with me afterwards and help us transform the lives of these kids. You will get volunteers to come. You will get that 80% who has been sitting there not doing anything, because that might have been the thing that got them excited about it, and they've never done anything before. So sometimes we have to think out of the box, but we have to make sure we're excited and passionate when we're sharing it. And if we can't share it, we want to make sure we coach whoever is going to be sharing it. You know, a lot of times if you got one of the pastors sharing it, it can turn into Eeyore up there. Oh, we got this great disability ministry. We need volunteers. Can you be a friend? Come transform the lives. Help them out today. Well, you're going to get a goose egg. All right. So it's having that passion coaching and helping through that. All right. Any other thoughts or questions on that volunteer recruitment piece or other things you guys are doing? All right, let's shift to the burnout, because that's a huge thing. And I forgot. Let's see. I think it was Jasmine and your group that brought that up. And right. So burnout is huge, and there's a few things that we can do. Or have any of you noticed that you're dealing with burnout in your ministry with volunteers? It's pretty common, and a lot of times it's happening and we don't realize it. So there's a couple things that we can do. One, I had it happening in front of me, and I was missing it because I was so keyed in on just trying to get everything filled that I was all of a sudden missing my individuals as a person. And that's what we need to continually do. And I started one simple little practice that completely transformed, and really it was two, it completely transformed everything. I started to do a little team huddle about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes before our service time, where I met just with our buddies that were serving in our ministry. And we would get together and I would ask them for how I could be praying for them that week. And they would share their prayer requests. I would jot it down. And again, I had a lot of students, so they might have told me they had a big test on Wednesday. Well, guess what? Wednesday morning at 9 or 10, I would text them and say, praying for your exam today. God's got you. You're going to do great. All of a sudden, they're like, oh my gosh, Doc's really treating me like a person, and he cares for me, and he's praying for me. So that made it real. The other thing, one of the big reasons for burnout is we have vision leak, and our volunteers forget why they're there. And so, at the church I was at, we always said, I would make sure we had the same vision as the entire church. Each ministry took that and then applied it to us. And I would then share that vision with our entire team every single Sunday and remind them, and then say, so remember, we're here then to help our individuals become outward focused followers of Christ. And so if we get bit today, if we get hit, or if there's a behavior, our job is to show the love of Jesus to them and help teach them how to love, how to know, and how to walk in the love of Jesus. And that way, when something did bad go happen, they're like, oh yeah, I'm here to help teach them about Jesus and do that. And they're not going to forget. If we don't remind them of that all the time, you can get hit one week and be okay, but then the next week you might get scratched, so there might be a behavior, and all of a sudden you're kind of forgetting why you're there and what you're supposed to be doing. And it's easy for a volunteer to say, I'm checking out, I'm done, I'm burned out, this isn't for me, and leave. The other thing to help with the burnout is, how often are you having the volunteers serve? Yeah, it's awesome if you can have them serve every single week. We would all love that. We'd love that for consistency, but we need to see if that's right for them. So it might be maybe that they can only serve every other week, or maybe once a week. Don't ever make them feel guilty for that. If a volunteer cancels on you, whether they're sick or they have a vacation or something came up, thank them. Thank them for letting you know, and don't put any pressure on them. Oh, are you sure you can't help out? We're really short. It's not their issue that you're short. You just flat out thank them and don't put any of that pressure on them. And that's going to help build that. And then if you can find ways that you can encourage them, like I did the prayer, and then I got a little encouragement coordinator to do the little things once a month, that makes a difference too. So being in touch with the volunteers, helping them know they're not just a number, really helps in decreasing that burnout. And then checking in with them. The other thing I like to do is ongoing training. Do any of you have, I'm assuming most of you do a training when they first start, but do you have ongoing training throughout the year for your volunteers? Oh, you're muted there, Jasmine.
Yeah, we have mini trainings for like each department leader.
Perfect.
But not like a big one. I mean, we'll have one yearly like annual get together.
Right. Yeah. So what I like to do is I try to do a quarterly training. Now, here's the hint. Never call them a training. As soon as you call them training, you're not going to get volunteers to come because they think they've already been trained. And so for me, and again, when I was dealing with my disability ministry, my volunteers mainly were buddies. So I called it a buddy gathering, and I made it a big social event, and it was a family time. Now, they didn't realize it. The whole evening was surrounding a training that we were going to do. But for instance, I might pick and these training buddy gatherings were about an hour and a half long. And I would maybe pick something that we really haven't had a chance to really go into, but they need to know more information about. A perfect example, how to deal with a nonverbal child. You don't really get a lot of conversation about that in training or do some things. I do a little bit in my training, but you can really go deeper with that. So we would start off our buddy gathering, and maybe we start off, we might do it as a potluck, or we might do a cookie exchange, have everyone bring in something, and we have that little social time. And then I have us play a game. Well, guess what? My game that week is charades. We're communicating without words. We're actually teaching them how to communicate to someone nonverbal, but they have no clue that that's what they're doing. And then I would have a devotional, and my devotional would actually be something with that. And then I would come down, it would be about a 15 to 20 minute, training on that. I had high attendance on those because we spent a lot of time together as a family, as a community. It was fun. The games were fun, and it just re-emphasized everything we were doing. And so that made it really easy for them. And then that helped them, again, keep engaged, because all of a sudden they're not feeling like they're on an island. Sometimes volunteers are giving up their own Sunday school class or their own small group time to serve, and their volunteering becomes their small group. Well, we have to take that into account and help give them that community, and this helps in doing that. Any thoughts or anything that you guys might have done or think through, or other ways you all might have been working with dealing with burnout or trying to prevent burnout?
I think for me and my local church context, in 2019, we 2018, we started the program for disabilities. And it was doing okay. We had a strong leader. The pandemic came and it just kind of threw us off. But I realized that consistency was needed in terms of promoting for more individuals to come on board. And because of the pandemic, because we had closed, we were on Zoom, those with disabilities kind of either logged off or just just gave up in some instances. So we're actually trying to rebuild right now in terms of the local church context. And we have volunteers who are coming in. So from what you shared, I'm realizing I need to have more of those team huddles with them, as well as encouraging. So I experienced burnout during the pandemic as well. I think many individuals who are either clergy or just working in the church, doing that 80-20 aspect, you're kind of burnt out. So praising individuals became something that I wasn't doing enough of. And so at this point, I have to, even though I may feel tired from what you shared, I need to encourage as much as possible those who are still carrying on the fight.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, Sean. You're in the same place. I think everybody's in that point. I don't know of many churches. It's a few small number that are maybe even back to where they were pre-pandemic. A lot of places have had to completely rebuild their volunteer bases. I know that, and there's a lot of reasons for it. A lot of people, everything went online, and a lot of people really got used to going to church in their pajamas and just staying home, and they haven't returned to church. A lot of people forgot why they served, why they were a volunteer to begin with. And so, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And so you're absolutely right. We're having to rebuild this whole generation, if you would. It also really hurt our youth because it knocked out 2 years of our senior high school students, our juniors and seniors, who really didn't get a chance to serve and model that and then pass that on to the sophomores and freshmen. And so then as they got older and into that senior leadership where they could then be modeling that, they didn't know what to do and they didn't have that experience, so they didn't do it. So we are in the process of doing a whole mind shift and redo that for everybody. So that is tough, and we have to work harder now with it. But we need to find ways that we can work smarter and not necessarily harder all the time with it. But yeah, you nailed it. I think one of the things for us is to make sure we're encouraging them and helping them through that. The other big thing is that we're doing training for them at the front side of it. We can't expect, them to come in and just do a training. And so let's talk real quick on training. So I was a children's pastor for several years, and I can speak about my training. I don't know what the children's ministry training is like at all your churches, but it's extremely rare to find a children's ministry training that covers anything at all, not even one word on how to deal with a behavior. It's not good. You're usually dealing with all the policies, all the procedures, where the bathrooms are, bathroom policies, never be left one-on-one, what do you do in bad weather, what do you do if, check out, you always have to match security codes, whatever that is. You've got all these policies and procedures we have to go through, but we never talk about behavior. Behavior can happen for any child, not just individuals with special needs. And the important thing for us to remember is all behavior is a form of communication, even bad behavior. Bad behavior, kids are trying to tell us something. They just don't know how to tell us that. So it's our job as volunteers, as ministry leaders, to try to interpret that and figure out what that is. Well, it's our job as ministry leaders to train our volunteers to know how to do that. And that's one of the things I do. I come into churches and I train volunteers to learn that. And I do a lot of behavior training in the training I do on how to work with individuals with disabilities. Just one quick example, and it's something I wish I knew when I was a younger parent, when my kids were preschoolers. Oh my gosh, my life would have been so much better. But think about it. If you're a parent or as a ministry leader, let's just say you have someone running. What do we do when someone's running and they're not supposed to? Hey, Susie, stop running. Don't run. Stop running. Do they ever stop? Almost never. Why? And here's where it took me time to use my medical background and realize what's happening. The human brain focuses on that last word they're hearing, and we're reinforcing the running. We're saying running every time, and they just hear running, and so they keep running, and they're not going to stop. Instead, we have to train how to change our mind into something different. So what I mean, let me give you guys a quick example. Do not think of an elephant. Stop thinking of an elephant. Do not think about an elephant. How many are thinking of a squirrel? None of you. You're all thinking about an elephant because that last word I said. But if I said, to Susie who's running, if I'd say all of a sudden, hey, let's come over to the table and let's color. 90% of the time, she might actually stop and transition. When we tell them something positive we want them to do, they will do it. And it's worked on my kids. It's worked on the individuals I work with, both with who are neurotypical and those with disabilities. It's amazing. We just aren't used to that as parents, as volunteers. And so that can really help. And so that's one thing I do with my training to help. And so that's an example, but we have to give our volunteers the ability to succeed in what they're doing, and to be able to succeed on during class and everything, as they're going through that. So that's a big one. Let's shift just a little bit, because I know one of the other questions was, what do we do when we don't have enough help? And so that's always a big question, and that always comes up a lot. What do some of you do when you don't have enough help? Besides send up text message prayers, God help now. What do you all do?
I know that I'm kind of creating the system right now, but we have like when a new family comes in, they have a little packet that they're going to fill out. And in this packet, it's going to say, my kid will thrive with a one-on-one buddy. My kid will thrive with a, some redirection or something like that. And so like the goal would be to have everyone to have somebody or one person to have two people or things like that. But if people don't show up, we can look back at those packets and look at the needs of the kids and say, okay, well, this person needs a one-on-one buddy. Okay, we're gonna take this person from this person and put them over here. And this kiddo may need a one-on-one buddy for bathrooming, when snack time, transitions, things like that. But overall, they got the flow of church service down. So maybe they don't need a one-on-one buddy most of the time. So just kind of knowing the kids and shifting volunteers as the day goes on.
No, that's great. Anyone else?
When I have last minute changes, so when I have volunteers that are out on a Sunday morning and I don't have someone to cover, what I've been doing is going into our classrooms, and I generally know the regular volunteers in our classrooms as well. So I will pick out a volunteer in that classroom that I know is capable of working with the particular kiddo in that room, and I will pair them with that kiddo and give them any information they need for that day. So they will become a one-on-one buddy for the day, even though that's not typically their serving role. And that has worked out for us so far.
Good.
But I also try to schedule, I'm still working on getting the volunteer base for it, but my goal is to have at least one floating buddy scheduled each week, so that floating buddy can take over a one-on-one buddy position if needed.
Absolutely. I love you saying that, Michaela. That's one of the big things I always encourage. Plan on recruiting at least one position every hour that you have for a floating buddy, a buddy float.
Pastor Jackson, did you want to talk about the junior workers maybe?
Go right ahead.
No, you know more about it.
So shy. We have junior workers, which are like buddies. There are children from age 12 to 18. And so what we do is if we have people that are in need of one-on-one, we'll put our junior workers with them. But we have to keep everybody in the same room because of our space. So that's kind of hard. So our first through third grade, they're all in the same space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that can work absolutely fine. So, I always tell everyone, do what works for your ministry. There's two ways you can do ministry with disability. Either have everyone integrated when they're age appropriate classes, which is actually my preference, especially in children's ministry, or have it segregated where those with special needs are in their own room. I don't prefer that one as much. And if you talk to the parents, they prefer being integrated in the classrooms.
I find that when you have them all in one room, it's difficult because then the behavior gets out of hand more often.
They play off of each other with the behavior. Absolutely. It makes it hard. Plus, being in the age appropriate room, they have their peers that are modeling good behavior and they can learn from. And what I also like about it, we're teaching the peers how to accept and welcome individuals with special needs. And so that's a two-way street. That's very important. So I think with Michaela, I think, one of the things that I loved with that I agree, or maybe it was Caitlin, I forgot which one of you kind of hinted at. One of the important things to remember, just because you've got an individual who has special needs or a disability does not mean they have to have a buddy. And so that's something we have to get into our mind with that. I approached our families, especially when I met a brand new family. My first question for a brand new family always, which I'm going to share this, and I hope all of you add this to your questions. My very first question for any brand new family in our ministry with a child with special needs, tell me something wonderful about your child. Tell me something wonderful. And frequently the parent will start telling me about all the bad things about their diagnosis. I will always stop them and say, no, I want to hear something wonderful. And then the parent will understand what you just asked. And first, they most likely will start crying. 90% of the time, I'll have mom and dad both crying because no one's ever asked them that before. But you're showing them that the child is more important. The diagnosis is not what makes the child. They're first a child of God, and we want to welcome that. And I know there's something special. So let's celebrate that. And then we can figure everything out. But as I'm evaluating that child, I'm also making in my mind, can they make it on their own? And I always tell my parents right up front, we try to allow the individuals to succeed on their own without a buddy. We'll be checking on them, seeing how they do. And if they need it, we will give them the assistance. But if they don't, we'll allow them to succeed on their own. Parents light up usually with that and love it. Now, if I watching them and the kids bouncing all around, or they have other physical issues that they may need assistance, I don't say that. We'll say they need a buddy. But not everyone is going to need that one-on-one buddy. So you can adjust and see that. And just like I think it was Michaela that said, she'll tap into some of the other leaders in the classroom to kind of tag team and keep an eye and help with that. That's a great way to help out when you're doing that. Now, I want to throw out another way, and this comes to Faye's question and point. You guys are near a college, and how can you get them involved? But it's not just going to be a college. This could be your local high schools. It could be anything. And I know Jasmine already mentioned this a little bit, but I'm going to assume most of your churches have requirements for a volunteer to serve. In order for someone to serve in your children's ministry, they probably have to be a member of the church. They may or may not have to have been at your church for X number of months or years first, and they have to have a strong statement of faith. Well, what I have found in high schools, you've got National Honor Societies who need volunteer hours and would love to do something like this. In colleges, you've got education departments with special ed teachers who need more experience. You got occupational therapy, physical therapy students who need experience with special needs. And so you can talk to them about joining you and helping you out. Here's where I started thinking about things. And I went to our pastor staff. As a buddy working with a one-on-one with an individual with special needs, that buddy really is not doing any of the education. They're there as a guide on the side, making sure they're safe. It's still a teacher-generated curriculum usually, or a lead teacher. Someone else is doing that teaching, and they're just kind of helping make sure they're safe and staying focused and doing everything else. So I went to our staff and I said, look, I want to challenge this, that just for our buddies, we can turn this into an outreach ministry. We can tap into some of our local universities, to our local high schools, and give them opportunity where they can come in and serve and get community service hours. And I promise you, these are people who probably would never come into our church otherwise. They love individuals with special needs, and we need volunteers. They need hours. It's a perfect marriage. Let's try it. We prayed about it in our pastoral staff. We all agreed to try that. Well, we launched. I'm never going to forget my very first student that did it. She was 16, 17 years old, National Honor Society. We had 5 services every weekend, 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. She served all 5 services all weekend, got 5 hours of community service, did it for 1 month straight. After 4 Sundays, she came up to me after the last Sunday service and said, Doc, I've got a question for you. What's this whole Jesus stuff all about? And I then got to share the gospel with her, and I led her to Christ. 2 months later, and then all of a sudden she stopped serving 5 hours. She only served 4 hours because she went to service 1 hour. And then 2 months later, her mom and dad and 18-year-old brother came in and met with me along with her. And they said, Doc, what did you do to our daughter? We want it because you've changed her life. She's completely different. She's no longer mad. She's not angry. She's not evil to everybody. She has this loving disposition, and you've changed her life. We want to know what that is. And I got to share the gospel to all of them. I led all of them to Christ. Over the next 6 years, I have led at least 150 of my volunteers to Christ going through that process. Wow. So it became a huge outreach for our church in doing that. And so, you know, we could get locked in saying, oh, nope, you have to be a member of the church for 6 months, 12 months. You have to have a strong statement of faith. And we would never have gotten to share the gospel with these people because they would never, ever come to a church otherwise. But they needed community service hours. They loved individual special needs, and they came in, and God blessed that. And so those are ways that you can get out and do that. You reach out to the schools, you find out the leaders of those areas, and then you just talk to them and say, hey, once you get it approved with your church, say, we've got community service hours. You know, we'd love to have you help out and do that. And they're going to jump at it. They're all on board it. A lot of sports teams, student sports teams, they'll come out as a whole and do it because they need credit too. Some of those, and then you can tap into some of the different schools, some of the private schools, they need certain hours. So those are all different ways that you can tap into your community to get extra hours. But what I love, you become an outreach and you're showing Jesus to them because they're actually hearing about it just as your individual with special needs is. We're sharing the gospel to them. Well, the volunteer is hearing that too. And so we're planting seeds and very cool things can happen there. Yeah, go ahead.
I like that a lot, that idea, you know, of getting the schools involved. Because I think also when you do that, you can buddy up your people with the people who are studying that particular thing, and they could learn a lot from them, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's helping your team also. So I really like that. Pastor Jasmine will talk about it more, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Other thoughts, or are there any specific issues that are going on or difficult situations that you're not quite sure how to handle that we can talk about? I'll throw out a thought. It's one of the common questions I get all the time. I know a couple of you I've already talked this with, so you know, bear with us. You guys can jump in as well, and you might have had some of these conversations now. But how do you have a conversation with a parent when you believe their child has special needs, but they don't have a diagnosis? How do you offer them help without making them upset and telling them their child has a diagnosis? Has anyone come across that? It's really common in preschool, and then early elementary, kindergarten, first grade. What do you do in those situations? Anyone?
I know that we have a couple of those instances in our church, and I've tried to structure all of these accommodations to go into every classroom. So we're going to have fidgets in every classroom. We're going to have visual schedules in every classroom. We're going to have all of these sort of things that are for kids with special needs, but then also for anyone can use a fidget and it be helpful for them, or anyone can benefit from a visual schedule. That is something across the board, but specifically people with special needs do benefit from that sort of thing. And we're like in trainings and things like that, we just try to hone in on the fact that we're not a school, we're not a doctor's office. We're going to have all of these accommodations for anyone to use, and anyone is welcome to use it. But as a church, it's not our place to come up to, like, especially volunteers. It is not our place to come up to someone and say, hey, I think your son was plugging his ears during worship. I think he has autism. Like, that should not happen at all. And so just equipping like different accommodations, and like headphones are always in the worship area and things like that, that maybe we can see a need and fulfill it, but making a strong stance on like the special needs ministry is, and different accommodations are for any kid, and they do not need a diagnosis or a formal like, oh, this kid will need a fidget. Sometimes that happens and that's so good, but then we are not a school, we are not a doctor's office, and so we're just going to help everyone as much as we can hear about the gospel. So that's kind of how we're doing it.
That's great. Anyone else or other thoughts?
That's a question that I've received several occasions right now. And, you know, what Caitlin shared is correct. We don't give the diagnosis.
Right.
But if you have a parent and they do have a child that they, you know, you're offering the services and the child is benefiting from it, but they don't have a diagnosis, or they refuse to have a diagnosis of their child, I think it's a predicament. What I've noticed when I did a seminar at the church, a general seminar in the afternoon, that one mother who refused to get a diagnosis, you know, with her husband, they just did not want to believe. They didn't believe that their child had this special need. When we went through everything, especially with autism, and we showed some of the features, she started to cry because at that point it came home to her. And now her child was an adult, and there are some things that she could not really force him to do anymore, or, you know. So I realized it's probably best to do a general survey or a seminar to allow individuals to feel free or at liberty to talk about the disabilities, instead of feeling that there's some stigma towards it. So general, it helps. If you can individually, it may be a little bit more challenging, but I found in a general setting, people may feel more comfortable talking.
Yeah, so good points. So let me share a little bit about this, and Sean hit a couple important things. You may have parents who refuse to accept a diagnosis. They're just not willing to do that yet. Or especially in preschool, their child hasn't been to a preschool yet, hasn't been to a school system yet, so they've not been anywhere to have that be brought up yet. They've not seen their doctor enough to have them realize, or they've not shared anything. Deep down, the parents think, oh, there might be something there, but they're so scared of it, they won't share that or do it. Also, you may have families at your church who know they've got a child with a diagnosis, but they're refusing to tell you because they're afraid you're going to kick them out of the church, because that's what happens at the majority of churches in the United States. And their friends all talk about that. So they're going to keep their mouth shut because they want to still go to the church, and they don't want their kid and them to be kicked out. So it's easier to deny it and just say, oh, he's just hyper. And hyper can take care of a lot of different things. So we do have to have discussions with this. And so let me share how I handle this situation. So first off, this discussion has to come from the children's ministry leader or the preschool leader. It cannot come from the special needs or disability ministry leader, because that's immediately going to put up, red flags, and parents are going to have their guards up. So it has to come from someone they know that they frequently see. They would see them. So I'm going to pick on Jasmine here for a minute. So Jasmine being in charge of the kids, it needs to come from her. If I was on staff at Church of the Revelation there, and I was a disability pastor there, as soon as I come in to talk to them and I'd say, hey, I'm Doc Hunsley, I'm the disability pastor, they're going to back up and shut down immediately. Walls are up. But Jasmine, who they see on a regular basis anyways, being over kids, she comes up, they probably already know her, And she can start having a conversation and walls aren't already going up. This is a conversation that is not had in the hallway. So this is where, I would meet mom and dad when they're picking up Johnny from Sunday school. I'd say, hey, would you guys just mind coming in the room real quick? I'd like to talk with you real fast. And here's now where we give this as a sandwich. We give a positive, then we talk about the issue, and then we end with another different positive. And so I'll share how I do this. I'll start off and we'll call him Johnny. I'll say, you know what? We absolutely love having Johnny with us. Today, he had a great day. He did a great job of playing with the other kids in the class. But we have noticed that Johnny is pretty active and loves getting into things and is constantly on the move. Have you noticed that at all at home? Oh yeah, he's everywhere. Well, what we would like to do and offer is to just offer a friend or a buddy who can work with him to keep him on task and where he can learn more about Jesus and learn the lesson and not miss everything because he's missing out on doing everything else. Would you be okay with us providing a buddy to help him stay on task? Oh yeah, that would be amazing. We'd love that. Or they may say, oh yeah, he has one at school. Oh, fantastic. Why does he have that at school? And then they might share that with you. They're now not afraid of you kicking them out because you're telling them you're willing to work with them. And then, my next point with that is, what our buddies are actually ran by our special needs or our disability ministry. We're not saying he's got any diagnosis. That's just oversees all of our individuals that needs help, someone to help them and stay on task. And so if it'd be okay, I'll have them reach out to you. So just so we know when you're coming, so we can have someone to work with them. And, we just absolutely love having him here. He is such a joy and we can't wait to see him back next week. I've really not had many parents get upset when I approach it that way. And when I come in as the children's leader doing that. If I come in as a disability leader, it's never going to work. So that's where you really have to have that good relationship with the children's team to have them start that first conversation. They can absolutely talk with you and have you come and evaluate the child, see what you think. But that conversation has to come from the children's team. Questions on that? How does that sound? Does that make sense? Something you guys think you can apply?
I think it does, definitely. And in sitting here thinking, one of the ways that I have approached parents, because I am both of those things, the preschool pastor and the disabilities. And sometimes we see it when they're really young. I said before, I don't have formal training, but I've been working with early childhood for over 35 years. So, you see things. Absolutely. So if we've had a 3-year-old that won't make eye contact, that's not speaking yet, I've approached it with, have you had their hearing checked? We're wondering, are they hearing us? And even though they are hearing us, so then that just kind of directs them to their pediatrician. And every time I've said that, they've been receptive to it. Oh, I've thought that same thing. I'll have that checked. And I said, well, would you follow up with me after you do that? And sometimes they've come back with, well, they're doing some more testing. And then we come back and they say, well, we do have a diagnosis of autism. Right. Can you work with us? Absolutely, we can work with you. So that's just one small way that I have approached that.
Yep, that's perfect. That's beautiful.
So, can I say something
else?
So we deal with a lot of parents that have the diagnosis, know it, but don't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my approach to those parents, as Miss Faye and your same approach, but I asked to have a discussion with the parents, and first of all, to let them know they usually have a lot of guilt and saying this is my fault. So my target is to target them as a support and offer them that say, we are here to support you, and we have a support group for you.
Love
And
it.
so that takes the big load off of now putting the child into the class. Or the biggest part for us is that they're having a lot of guilt, thinking this is my fault. I can fix this, versus someone supporting the actual person, the family, the mom, the dad first. And so our first role is to support them, and then let them know that we're here every step of the way with you. And now putting them in the classes is the easier part.
Yeah. Cynthia, I love you. Absolutely. I can't agree any stronger with you. So, yes. So one thing, just kind of let you know, you may or may not know this. When a parent gets a diagnosis for their child, they truly go through the entire grief process, all 7 stages. I did. And that includes the anger, the guilt, all that, and finally ends with the acceptance. But it takes a while, and it's different for everybody. And so it's not uncommon that, just like Cynthia said, the parents know that, but they sure are not about to accept it. They're still upset about it, or they may be guilty about it. And, they're going through the grief of losing the child they had dreams of and for. They're thinking all of a sudden their child may not be getting married. Their child may not go to college, even though there might be possibilities for that to happen. Just the way our brain thinks, we immediately shut off all the big hopes and dreams we had aren't going to happen. For me, I'm immediately, I'm not going to be able to throw the ball with my son and play catch with him. I'm not going to be able to coach his baseball team. And none of that happened. Well, that was very tough for me to get over. But, God helped me get through that. And it's different for everyone. One parent may go through it faster than the other parent. And so just like Cynthia said, we need to come, and it's what I mentioned earlier, we have to support the entire family. Disability ministry is not just the individual with a diagnosis, it's the entire family. So if you can provide support groups or do anything to help them through that, it's fantastic. And if you don't have that, giving them options for other places where they can connect. I've got some options. SOAR, we have a few different things. We've got some sister organizations that have some great, fabulous things as well that, if you're looking for things, let me know and I can help get you set up with that. But those are great points to remember as we're going through that. But listen and really be caring for them, and that's going to make a huge difference. All right. Other thoughts or things going on? Anyone having specific behavior problems you're seeing in your ministries?
I have a question, and maybe some other people have done this too. So we're creating a sensory room right now at my church for each of our campuses. What I'm like hitting a wall with a little bit, we have like the funds, we have everything. I'm just worried that we're going to create this sensory room and then it's going to become the special needs timeout room. So how have you all educated your congregation in a way that makes the sensory room a tool, but not something, okay, Garrett, I just made up that name. Garrett's starting to be bad. Let's send him to this room. All of that obviously is not true, but
that's beautiful. And that is the biggest problem I see with ministries that have sensory rooms. Whenever a child starts to have behavior, we take them out and move them to the sensory room to have it dealt with there. And the behavior remarkably stops. But that's the worst thing we can do. We are rewarding bad behavior with a good reward. And all of a sudden, you're going to see constant behavior all the time because they want to go to that sensory room. So you just have to lay the law down that they can't go there. Has anyone else experienced this, or what are you doing?
So I just wanted to just follow up on that. Are you saying that we should not promote sensory rooms?
No, not at all. I think sensory rooms are huge and they need to happen. So I'll let me unpack it a little bit more. So there's two things. Sensory rooms are wonderful. And if you're able to have it in your ministry, please have it. I had 4 sensory rooms I developed for my ministry. And they were great, but they were rewards. You actually had to earn time in the sensory room. You never went to the sensory room having a behavior. If the child or individual was having a behavior, we dealt with it in that room, or we dealt with it in the hallway, or dealt with it somewhere else that just wasn't fun. And they didn't get to go to that room. Now, however, if I was starting to see, them getting overstimulated and things happening there, that might be a case where I would pull them out of the situation they might be in, and we might go to the sensory room just to help them calm down. That's not a behavior. That's, again, their reactions letting they're getting too much stimulation and we need to calm it down. And so that is a good use for the room. But, if they're sitting there, they're hitting people, they're yelling, they're, whatever that might, we don't go to the sensory room to stop that. But I love having reward boards. It's a great way to get an individual to do what you want to do. And you can have 5 things for them to work on. And I don't have one in front of me, so I apologize. But you can get a piece of paper. I get tiny little clipboards, and I put Velcro, 2 strips of Velcro on each side. And then I've got 5 little stars with Velcro backs. And when they do something that they're supposed to, they get to move the star over. They only get to move the star for positive behavior. They never move the star. The stars never get removed for bad behavior. We're only rewarding the good behavior. And once they get all 5 stars moved over, they then get to do whatever that predetermined reward is. It might be listening to music on a phone or an iPad. It might be, going somewhere. It might eat a snack. It may be go to the sensory room. For me, most of the time it was going to my sensory room because everyone loved going there. The one thing I would say, I never allowed them go to the sensory room during story time because I want them to hear the gospel. I'm not going to take that away from them because they're not hearing that in the sensory room. And so, but they could skip their snack time, they could skip the craft and the play time. Those would be the time, but they couldn't lose out on the story time. And so otherwise though, as we're working with the individual, sometimes, especially if you're in worship and, the music might be loud, you might be trying headphones, you might try sunglasses. And if you're seeing that's not all working, that might be a time that we can try to go to a sensory room to help quiet things down, to help them from a sensory standpoint. So a sensory room can be a calming effect. It can be where they can get out some of the extra energy that they have, but it can't be an area for them to be having the behaviors and to eliminate behaviors. Does that help, Sean? Okay. Anyone else with questions or thoughts there and Caitlin, does that help with your question? So, that is a huge, and I'm so glad you brought that up. That is the biggest problem that I see to happen with sensory rooms. I'm a huge fan of them. I wish everyone could have a sensory room. And I've also helped people create portable sensory rooms. So if you're in a portable church, you can have a portable sensory room that can move around. It's super easy to do. And it doesn't take a whole lot. You don't have to have thousands of dollars to do it. You can, my first sensory room was very cheap. It was less than $500 for me to do everything. Some of the best fidget toys, again, are McDonald's Happy Meal toys. Ask your parents to donate McDonald's Happy Meal toys. They're ecstatic to get them out of their house because the kids stop playing with them once they leave McDonald's, and all that happens afterwards are the parent steps on them and hurts their foot barefoot. And 80% of McDonald's Happy Meal toys are great fidget sensory toys. But you can get like different carpet squares and mop heads and a lock that they can, a chain link lock that they can do and undo. A water bottle that you fill up with like little ball bearings and then super glue it shut so they can't open it, and they can shake it and it's got some weight to it. And then you can, make your own board. I've got pictures of ones that I've done. If you'd want, you can contact me and I'm happy to send you my pictures of both the board that we made to have on the wall as well as a portable board I've made. You can also get a pop-up tent. Have someone donate that. Someone probably has a pop-up tent that they're not using anymore, and you can throw that in a corner of a room or in the back of a room. And that might just be enough where someone can crawl in and it just kind of shuts out some of the light and just allows them that chance to be quiet. So you don't have to have a full sensory room. That's perfect for if someone doesn't have the room, but you might have space in the back of a classroom. Just throw a pop-up tent that they can go in there to do that. Okay, other questions, ideas, concerns, problems? One other thing I want to make sure everyone knows about, there is a conference that starts today called the All Access Disability Conference. It is a virtual conference, all on disability ministry. It's based in Houston, Texas. I'm doing a talk on volunteers and volunteer recruitment for it. It's virtual. And then what's nice about this conference, you'll have, if you register for it, you'll have lifetime access to all the talks. So that's wonderful. I'm going to copy and put in the link in the chat here, the link to register for it. And then the code is SOAR, all capital letters, and that takes $20 off. But it's going to make the conference $50 for you. But that code SOAR, SOAR, all capitalized, will take off $20 for you. And so it's a great deal. A lot of my friends are speakers at it. And there's something for everybody at that conference. It's based out of Houston, actually based out of Alvin, Texas, just outside of Houston. And this year they went virtual, but it's all going to be, you'll have access to these talks for lifelong. So that's a great opportunity. And so $50 is the best thing. So it's $70 otherwise. Use the code SOAR, it'll be $50. And then, like I said, if you're in Atlanta on March 11th, we have a conference there, the Together Conference, and I'll be speaking at that. And then later in April, the end of April, if you're in Cleveland, Ohio, or around Cleveland, Ohio, there is the Disability in the Church Conference. And I'll be speaking there. Plus, I'll be doing an intensive on disability ministry 101. Pretty much everything you need to know for doing disability ministry or how to start in any size church and what to do. So that's a 2-day conference with a Thursday being an extra day of intensives. So those are conferences coming up that, if you're around and able to do, those would be great opportunities. We will have our Wonderfully Made conference hopefully in 2024, but if not, it'll be in 2025. We've had to postpone due to lack of bandwidth for our staff. I just don't have the bandwidth to put on a full conference myself right now. We lost our conference director, and so we're hoping to be able to build that up. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, praises going on with ministry? Well, I can talk forever, as if you guys couldn't tell that. But I don't want to just talk to talk. So, I will give you guys an extra 30 minutes back to your life. I think we've had a great discussion here today. I will be getting this video edited and we'll put it up on our YouTube page and then also on our Facebook page. If you don't know, we have a SOAR Disability Ministry Facebook page as well, SOAR Disability Ministry Network. Go and ask to join if you haven't already. And that's also another place where you can post questions and other people from literally across the world will join. I've now assisted over 500 churches throughout the United States and 12 countries around the world in creating disability ministry. And so sometime we actually had a friend from Kenya was going to try to join us today, but may not have been able to. But previously we've had some of our friends from Romania join. And so we do occasionally get people from all over the world on these chats. So with that, if there's nothing else, I appreciate seeing you all, and we'll meet again 4th Thursday next month. But March being an odd month, it'll be from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Central Time. So you can go out and register again. I think the same link you did for this one, you can register for the future dates as well. So we'd love to have you back. And again, we're here, SOAR is here. I'd love, if I haven't done a consult with you, I'd love to do a consult with you. We also offer training where we can come alongside, do training for you, and multiple things, as well as coaching. So many things that we can help you in growing your ministry, whether we're just starting it or take what you have to the next level. And last thing I'm going to share, we host the nation's largest disability day camp in the country every summer. It's 2 weeks in July, 1 week in Overland Park, Kansas, 1 week in Lee Summit, Missouri. I would love to have you share that with your families. And you might be thinking, we're not in Kansas or Missouri. I know. What is wonderful with this, it is a perfect vacation opportunity for families with disabilities. And nobody ever does it. We've actually started having families from out of state come. We offer 40 hours of respite care for our family. We take all ages 3 and up. Our oldest camper's been 75 years old. We take all diagnoses, all severities. I have a full medical team, full behavior team. We will meet their needs and give them a great camp experience Monday through Friday for 40 hours and share the gospel with them. Meanwhile, parents, especially if they have other kids, they can go tour Kansas City and do things that a parent can't normally get to do when they also have a child with special needs that they're trying to, make sure everyone's safe. So they can create this amazing memory for their other kids, and then they can all be back together as a family in the evening. Our camp costs $499. So, that's just, and that includes the entire camp, lunch every day, 2 snacks every day, and a camp t-shirt. So it's just over $11 an hour for the respite care. So it's a fabulous deal, but they can go to our website, soarspecialneeds.org, to learn about that and check that out. But that we've had families from Virginia and Arizona and Texas come to it. And we've got a few more joining us this year. So would love to have your families be able to do it. It's something very different that they would never, ever get to do otherwise. And we've had tremendous feedback from the families from out of state. So pass that on, and would love to have you pass that to your families. But with that, thank you so much, guys, for being here. Hope that's been helpful for you, and we'll see you next month. God bless.